All right, let's do the block side of things. All right, so we are gonna make some interlocking buttons again. We've done interlocking buttons before. We made interlocking buttons for the navigation buttons on our UCI, right? And we did it like 3 different ways. We did it with individual event handlers that were doing it manually. Remember, they were punching and doing every single thing that we wanted them to do. And then we revised them and we had a function, and then we revised them again and it was a function, and that function had like an if-else statement for everything that happened. And we've done this. You know how to make an interlocking system, but we're gonna do it another way. We're gonna do it in a completely different way this time. I know, you're sad. We spent so much time earlier learning about interlocking buttons, and now we're gonna throw all that away for an entirely new concept. But if you hadn't done that work, then you wouldn't have been able to understand this one either. We're building you up in baby steps. So let's go to our block controller and edit our script. And here we are in the lighting controls. And we are going to, first of all, grab the event handler for our lighting preset buttons. Go to your controls. We got our light presets. Grab that very top one, which is the event handler. Right now, it's the event handler for just the first button. But you can see that now I've got a drop-down menu. So I can make an event handler that's just for button 1 or just for button 2. But I've got this lovely final option that says any. Any. Perfect. So for any of the lighting preset changes, I can do something. Oh, did you notice what just happened? Patrick, did you catch it?
I missed it.
Did you miss it? We have a brand new variable. Do you see it?
I see it now.
Where is it?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I can't see it. Block controller did not notify us that it just created a variable. There's no way of knowing this unless you know it. I know it, so now you know it. It created a variable based on which button we pressed. Whether we press 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it created a local variable within the context of this event handler that remembers if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Remember when we made that global variable earlier of the button that was pressed? Yeah, we didn't need to do that. We could have done it this way. It's okay, don't hate me. How do we know that this variable exists? If I go to my variables, it's not here. I can't find it. If I grab the foo, there's no variables in this design. How can I find it? Let's just test to see if it exists. Grab a debug print, snap it in your event handler, and where do I get it? Do I get it here? Do I hover over any? No, where do I get it? Go and grab that variable again. If my foo is outside of my event handler, there's nothing there. If I click it inside my event handler, something new, something magical. I don't know what that was. Was that Jeff Gold? I think it was a little bit of Jeff Gold.
Yeah, it was.
A little, just a little. Yes. I'm clicking control index. This is my brand new variable inside the event handler. The control index variable has been generated by the event handler to tell us what it was. Let's see if it works. I'm going to emulate this, and when I press button number 1, it debug prints number 1. If I press number 2, it prints out number 2. It's printing out the variable of whichever one was pressed. That is so much easier than telling every single event handler to create a variable and define it as number 1 or define it as number 2. It's already here in the script. We're going to use this to make our thing happen. And now the rest of it is very similar to what we did previously with the navigation buttons. We can rewrite this with an if-else statement using the control index to turn the buttons on or off. We need an if-else statement, if, and what are we going to validate? We're going to validate the control index. We're going to validate the control index. So if the control index, we'll use an operator to compare it. If the control index is equal to the value of number 1, which it will be when the button is pressed, then what are we going to do? We are going to set the control for preset number 1 Boolean to true. There we go. Okay. We need a bunch of else ifs, right? It might be number 2. It might be number 3. It might be number 4. Okay, so let's duplicate that. We're going to say if the control index is number 2, then we're going to set lighting preset number 2 to true. If it is number 3, then we're going to set number 3 to true. If it is number 4, we're going to set number 4 to true. Button 8, you say.
Button 8?
Didn't we do more than that earlier?
We did do more than that.
What did we do earlier beyond that? We reset everything first, right? We had to have a whole function that turned every button off, that said this button off, that button off, this button off, that button off. Do we still need to do that? Yeah, we still need to do that. We still need to turn the buttons off before we run this. Okay, let's do that. I'll duplicate this, snap it up here, and before we run, I'm going to say set control number all to false. One block. I can't. I'm not a good Jeff Goldblum impersonator.
I'm going to come up with one. You come back to me.
Thank you. So with one block, because we're using control banks, I was able to turn them all off in one fell swoop, rather than do what we did earlier with turn this off, turn this off, turn this off, turn that off, turn that off. Look at that event handler. This is so much nicer than that one that we built for our navigation buttons earlier. The power of the control bank using both any and all. Lovely. Fantastic. Let's save that. That is now our interlocking function. By the way, I will say this. If you're looking at this and thinking to yourself, could it be even easier? You might be right. Because if I look at this, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing the number 1 here and the number 1 there. I'm seeing the number 2 here and the number 2 there. The number 3 here and the number 3 there. Aren't these the numbers we're getting from the control index? Wouldn't this be even easier if I could just grab this control index and snap it right in there so that no matter which one was pressed, just the lighting preset number control index is turned to true? Then I wouldn't need 4 if-else statements, right? I could just use 1. That would be awesome. That'd be great. There are some limitations to what block controller can do. That's why this is the intermediate step, right? This is better than control components, but Lua scripting will go more beyond. It'll go more flexible.
Nate!
Oh my goodness, what's going on back there?
This is Jeff Perkins. He runs the advanced Lua class. So if you're thinking, can what I just saw in block controller be done easier in Lua? The answer is probably yes. And this guy's going to teach you. Stay tuned.
If you choose to go on to the 3rd version of this class where we do Lua scripting, that was Jeff Perkins. He'll be your instructor for that.
And this is my Jeff Goldblum. Must go faster, must go faster, must go faster.
Thank you. It was so worth it. It was so worth it. So if we did this with Lua, yes, we could do this really, really slick with like 2 lines where we could indeed basically use the control index as a variable within itself to reference itself to choose which button is on, and awesome. But block controller, there are limitations to what it can do, and just be aware of that. If it frustrates you, then it's time for you to start learning Lua.